Hey everybody, this is the QNY Tech Podcast. If you're hearing this and watching this right now, you are getting the live version of this. We're going to be recording this simultaneously to audio and um, editing that down to an audio podcast later. So you'll be getting some pauses on this and some places where we stop or go back because this is all live. So the audio version will be cleaner. But if you want to watch something live, like you are doing right now, or just following or watching the YouTube taped version of this, you'll see some pauses. It's like you're in studio, and I'm joined by Nicholas today. Nicholas, how are you doing?
Doing good.
Great. So, Nicholas, I'm just going to send out this link one more time, and I'm going to put this on Twitter if anyone wants to. We are live on YouTube right now. Check us out. Awesome. Then.
All right, exclusive broadcast, simulcast, one time only.
Again, just a reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's going to be a lot more boring. Because we're going to cut all this out. So you're recording the audio right now,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Oh, boy, God. I feel sorry for anyone watching this on YouTube. This is terrible TV. All right.
That's why it's free. You start to realize why people do hair and makeup, huh?
All right. Do you want the live link? And if you want to send this to anybody.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Oh, like right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Do not disturb. Let's go turn my phone off into do not disturb. Let everyone keep looking at Nicholas for a few seconds here. We still have 0 viewers.
Yep. As expected.
We got some viewers on Meerkat.
Well, Meerkat was pretty hot stuff. Let's see if it holds.
Reminder to everyone watching this on YouTube, all of this junk is going to be cut out when we go to tape.
So many silences.
All right, shall we get this bad boy going?
Let's get this show on the road.
Oh shoot, I didn't start my my timer here.
Yeah, do you want, I mean, if we think we're going to keep any of this before, I can just cut the 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
Can you drop a marker here?
Sure. 2:24.
Great. Hey everybody, this is Sunday, March 15th, 2015, and this is the QNY Tech Podcast. I am joined, as usual, by Nicholas Segura. Nicholas, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Daniel.
So, golly, there's no news. I mean, I don't even know what we're doing here today.
Is there no news? There's just very little news. Less exciting. It's, I mean, a downer by comparison.
Well, we already did our show last Sunday where we tried to predict everything that would happen at Apple's big event, and then we did our show on Wednesday night where we reviewed everything we did on Wednesday night, and now it's Sunday, so I think we've gone through most of the news, don't you?
Yeah.
I guess I took a few notes of some things that happened throughout the week, so we can go through a few things, a few Apple Watch things, a few non-Apple Watch things. I should say, for those of you who are listening to the podcast right now, we are trying an experiment today. We are actually broadcasting this on YouTube live. Apparently, we've got one viewer right now, so welcome to our one viewer. It's probably my mom.
It could be my mom, because, who do you send the link to first?
I sent it to both my
I
parents. Yeah.
yeah, there you go. All right.
All right. So I had a few additional thoughts about the Apple Watch, which I thought we could probably start off by
Sure.
talking about. So what did I want? So I guess the big question I have at the moment is, has Apple clearly explained to most people yet why they would need or want the watch? And part two of that question is, doesn't matter. And I guess what I'm driving at is I actually don't think Apple has really fully explained this in a way that everybody could get. And at the same time, I actually don't think that matters. I sent out an email to some friends the other day, and I asked them to tell me if they would be getting an Apple Watch or not.
Oh, you
And
did an informal survey, huh?
I did an informal survey, and one of the responses I got back from my aunt, she writes, "As you can probably guess, I'm not going to get an Apple Watch. I hate the idea of having all of my data on my wrist. I want some separation from my electronic life.
Yeah.
Even if it's the phone in my pocket, it is easier to ignore it that way if it dings me. My she's didn't type this right. My preference, I prefer my interactions face to face and don't want the temptation to always be glancing at my wrist." And I think what what they're what she's missing here, which is fine, is that this is actually not an addition to something. It's a replacement for five other things.
Yeah, I think if you if you ask, the non-tech enthusiast who isn't following along and you know cling to any trickle of information that's coming out. The message I think was kind of lost. I think you're right because the message that Apple was trying to send was not this is a new thing that you're going to need in order to grab your attention and to rule your life at all. It was almost the opposite. But that did not come through to the general public. I figure most people are only watching just the cursory, headlines of this event and just fill in the rest of the blanks themselves. Apple has a lot of re-education to do if they're going to reach consumers, the casual consumer.
Well, I think the problem is at the moment it seems like an extra device because it is an extra device. It's
Right.
one more device, and it seems funny to think that there's another device that can actually free you from other things.
And this is so many articles came out talking about Apple's true purpose for the Apple Watch that they couldn't state. Basically, that it would alleviate some of the necessity and the core function of the iPhone, which is their flagship product. They basically had to, not say. They had to, tiptoe around it. Hey, you won't need your phone for all this stuff, yet your phone's still totally necessary and great. They had to walk this line and sell it, but also cannibalize a lot of the importance of the iPhone implicitly.
And I think, part of the challenge that Apple has here is that the full potential of the watch is not going to be likely realized for a few years. I mean, I think of the watch as a wallet replacer. I think of it as a key replacer. So I'm literally, I think the watch, Rene Ritchie has written a lot about how the watch will save you time. I think not only will it save you time, it'll save you space. But I think a lot of those things are just so far from being realized yet. I mean, we do have Apple Pay, but we still need our wallet. Apple Pay is far from ubiquitous.
Yeah, it's in its infancy as far as catching on. Yeah.
And then, a lot of us have other cards in our wallets that we need for, mass transportation, for instance. NFC is so far away from being accepted on mass transport. But I think the potential here is that the thing that you're going to wear on the wrist is going to replace so many other things that you currently carry. But we're just not there yet.
Yeah, and actually, we kind of look back on the iPhone launch with rose-colored glasses, but it did not. The idea of the iPhone took the world by storm for sure, and the entire paradigm of what smartphones were and how important they were shifted completely overnight. But as far as actual sales and getting it into people's hands, it was still pretty niche. I remember the introduction of the iPhone, Steve Jobs was saying if we can get it in 10 million people's hands, 1% of the cell phone market share was his goal for the first year. And now that sounds ridiculous because, when it comes to smartphones, it's 40, 48%, something around there, but 40 plus, half essentially of the smartphone market. No one knew it would take off like that, and I think it needed to be out there in the wild and seen by the general public and used and touched, and we're just not going to see the effects of that with these first reactions of people.
Well, I think so you just hit the nail on the head, which is something I've been thinking about in sort of a blog post I'm formulating in my mind right now. So I sent out this informal survey to like 20 people yesterday. I got 3 responses back, and all 3 of them were no, I don't see a use for it. It's going to be an extra distraction. And what's interesting to me is that all 3 of those people who wrote back have iPhones right now. And I think those were late adopter iPhone users. And I think now they would probably all say that the iPhone, they see how essential the iPhone is to their lives, to how they want to be communicating. But 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when the iPhone first came out, I think a lot of those same people probably looked at the iPhone and said, I don't need to text message. Why would I text message? I can pick up the phone. And now, my aunt, text messages me all the time. And I think that's what it's going to. I think it's the. I hate to say need, but I do think it's going to become more compelling as more people have it, and
Absolutely.
it gets out. I think I'll just wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
I think my second question that I started was, does it matter that Apple hasn't fully sold it yet? I don't think so, because I think what's really going to sell it is you and I, the people who have it in the wild.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely correct, and I think if you took someone like your aunt who responded as she did, or the 3 people who responded, basically, if you took them 5 years prior to the iPhone, they would have probably said the same thing about the iPod when it was brand new. It just took a few years of traction and it catching steam and people really seeing what it's about. Because at first it was like, why would I pay that much money to have this nifty device? It's not a necessity. All these exact same descriptors for these products, which end up changing the way that we approach that facet of technology. MP3 players were toys back then, and phones were, also very limited. I think it's going to be the same with the Apple Watch. Apple knows that this is a cycle, and they're not worried about it. They just know that their job is to get the word out and to get people using them, and have us as early adopters as to create this halo effect, as they say, that we promote with good experiences that we've had, and it spreads just like anything else.
The other thing is, so I've been on Apple's website over the last few days, and I've been looking at some of the third-party apps that they're promoting. And I've said this before, but
Apple Watch apps?
Apple Watch apps that third parties are writing, so not Apple. And I think, and again, this is something I've said before, but it's becoming so clear to me, especially as I look at some of these apps. There are some apps that seem to make so much more sense on the wrist than in your pocket, than on your phone. And there's just a couple of examples.
Yeah, I think there's some things that are just more glanceable or are meant for the medium. And I'm interested to hear which ones you think.
Well, there were 2 in particular. I was like, and as I was looking at Apple's product page, and I was like, that to me is just so much more compelling on the wrist. So one of them was rain alerts. There's an app called Dark Sky, which I have on my phone, Sky. And whenever it senses that rain is an hour away, it gives you a little alert.
I think it's really granular. It tells you rain in 13 minutes. Like it's really tied to the satellites. It's really cool.
And it's tied to very specifically your location. Dark Sky is a great app. If you don't have it yet, I highly recommend you download it for your iPhone. I think it's $1.99 or $2.99.
Yeah.
And unlike the other weather apps, it is really focused on precipitation
and accuracy.
And it
extreme
is
accuracy.
Yeah, you can pull it up and it'll tell you, all right, it's raining right now exactly where you are, but in 9 minutes it won't be.
The other nice thing that would probably come into play with it being an app on the Apple Watch is that you can set it to alert you depending on the type of precipitation. So if you don't want to know every time there's a drizzle 10 minutes away, you can have it ignore that. But if you just want to, set it to torrential downpour or whatever it is, it'll let you kind of choose that level of notification.
It's a great app, but in some ways, I almost think, isn't that much better on your wrist? You're at a coffee shop and you get a little notification, hey, it's about to rain. Wouldn't you rather see that on your wrist than you feel the buzz in your pocket, pull it out of your pocket, acknowledge it? I mean, just that to me seems so much more natural on the wrist.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that it's 3 or 4 steps right now to what would basically be, turning your hand to glance and maybe a swipe 1 or 2 times, and you're there. I think you're right. It's made for that kind of interaction.
So that was one app, and I was just like, that to me seems inherently so much better on the wrist. And then the other app, and I said this earlier this week as well, is Uber. I mean, if you think about how we historically have hailed taxi cabs, it's been with our hands, right? I mean, you put our hands up and you get a taxi. And the wrist is kind of the digital version of that. And there's something very clunky about pulling your phone out and pulling up the Uber app, requesting the ride, and then standing there for the next 5 minutes with your eyes buried in your iPhone, tracking the progress of the Uber cab. It just seems to me like that's just screaming to all be done on the wrist.
So what I'm realizing is that the most successful apps are not going to be, just like with the iPhone, when experiences had to be simplified for the phone, for the medium of the phone. And what we've got now with the watch is even deeper. Good apps are going to have to be simplified to their core, and that's going to be better for the user experience. So what you're talking about is the best apps are the ones that have gotten it down to just the bare necessities and the simplest interactions, and that translates to a better experience for us. The ones that don't get it right, that make it too granular, or that want you to type or interact too much with the watch, those are not going to survive.
So similarly, I was looking at some other apps on Apple's product page, and I'll try to pull it up right now without too much dead airspace. But there were some other apps, and I was like, well, this is just missing the point of what the watch is for. So just because you can have an app on your wrist doesn't necessarily mean I think you should have an app on your wrist.
Right.
So the point I'm trying to make is not every app is going to have an experience that I think is calling out for the wrist in the way that I think the Uber app is. I'm just pulling up Apple's product page right now, Apple App Store apps. I think one of them was, Citibank or Mint, where you could see your monthly budget. I mean, okay, that seems ridiculous. I mean, I guess I could sort of see, like, if you're out shopping, maybe you get a little warning, like you've spent too much money.
Right. So there's an app called Level that has a much simpler approach, because I don't think you want to be managing your budget from your iPhone. It's just a little too involved. But this app literally just you've set in it, you've connected it to your bank accounts or whatever, and you've told it what's a bill and what's your normal lunch meal cost or whatever. And what it tells you is, are you above or below your weekly or daily spending? And it just kind of gives you an indicator, a rough estimate based on your patterns. And that's something that could be totally glanceable. But something like Mint, that's trying to get way more in depth there, I agree. Probably not.
Yeah, let me see it. Yeah. View your monthly spending goals and track your progress towards meeting them. No, I don't want to do that on my wrist.
Yeah, I don't think I do either.
The phone in my pocket, that's much better served with the phone in my pocket. So with great power comes great responsibility.
I'm looking at this eBay app too. Outside of keeping tabs on and stressing you out over what auctions of yours are ending soon, I don't really know what it's going to do. I don't want to search for eBay items from my watch.
The other thing that I just want to emphasize for everybody listening is that I think there's this notion right now that with our phone, there's too many notifications, there's too many distractions. And one of the great things about the watch is that its notifications are controlled by a separate settings panel, meaning that you can get very, very granular about what notifications you want on your watch. And for me, one of the nice things about having the watch is going to be setting those so specifically. Because the thing that Apple keeps saying over and over again is that this is their most personal device. It's their most intimate device. I actually don't want. Oh, there's a lot of notifications that I find useful on the phone, like New York Times breaking news. Sometimes I
Right.
don't mind that.
You wouldn't want that on your watch?
I don't want. I want to know when my watch buzzes that it is someone near and dear to me trying to get my attention. It is my close friends. It is my family. They're texting me. They are emailing me. I want to know, and I know like everyone's going to use the watch differently, but for me, I'm going to set those notifications so specifically so that I know only the things that I really want to ever divert my attention from my actual real life are going to come through. Yeah, the notifications for me, that the way I'm going to set it, are going to be totally different than on the phone. And yeah,
Yeah, I think the experience of owning a Pebble has kind of shown you, wow, I get a lot of notifications. At least I know that for me, I've noticed that through having the Pebble because it's basically on, off, whatever's being notified on the phone, you're getting on the watch, and you realize, holy crap, I get a ton of notifications of any variety. Anytime there's a sale or an email or anything, and you start to feel overwhelmed. I think what we've got is that the Apple Watch will have kind of an inherent gatekeeping system of just compatibility. It's the built-in functions of the phone, the phone calling, that can come through, the messages that can come through, email if you set it up that way can come through, the basics can come through, and most of that stuff people will want, but if not, you can change it. And then the rest of it is kind of kept at bay based on whether there's support for that app or not, and whether the developer has gone and done it. And then you get to decide whether you want to buy into that experience. It's not just because I have the American Airlines app, I'm going to get their notifications or their promotions or whatever. So yeah, I hope that it doesn't have to be something where people go in and do granular, as you said, setting changes, because I think most people will just be frustrated and leave it at whatever the default is. I'm glad that by default, I don't think it'll be overwhelming. I think it'll be limited.
well, I liked the word that you just used there, gatekeeper. I think the watch is going to be a gatekeeper for your attention. At least that's how I plan on using it. I mean, I'm sure you could set up the watch so that it is literally just the full-on, stream of notifications that you're getting from your phone. But I want the watch to kind of be the bouncer for my
Mm-hmm,
attention
mm-hmm.
and only let in the things that I actually want to let in. And an app like Dark Sky, if that alerts me, how often does it rain, once a week, that's one notification a week that is going to be potentially very, important to me to get. Like, oh, hey, like make sure wherever you're about to go that you're going to bring an umbrella.
Yeah. No, and I think that the best experience with the watch is going to be for the person who decides not to try to get every notification. I mean, that all-day battery life, they're talking about 4.5 active, glancing, engaged hours is I think the statistic I heard. And for somebody who overdoes it on the notifications and buys into everything and doesn't, you know, cut some things off at the gatekeeper level, they're just going to have a watch that doesn't work quite as well or as intended. They're not going to have a good experience.
So let's see. So what are some of the other apps that Apple is promoting? They've got a lot of built-in apps, and they've got uh, they've got a bunch of apps that they built themselves, and there's obviously the third-party apps. There's a curious omission from the apps that they have, and I was really kind of struck by it because it was one of the ones that between September and now when they announced the watch, I actually thought I would get a lot of use out of, which is the Reminders app, and maybe it's buried there somewhere. But
Oh yeah, I thought that would be huge. I mean, a checklist of your to-dos, how easy would swipe it to check it off or push to? Yeah, it seems like an obvious fit.
well, the use case that I currently have, and maybe I'm just using the Reminders app wrong, but on my phone, I currently use the reminders app to put on my grocery lists. So
Yeah, I do the same.
I've got a grocery list and I've got a drugstore list, and they're two different lists. And because it's on the reminders app, it syncs to my iPad and all my computers. So wherever I am, if I remember, like, oh, I need to get toothpaste or I need to get some tomatoes, I add it to the appropriate list.
The best thing I found is when you have a significant other that is also helping with the grocery shopping, you can share the lists, and that works great. Because like I would get literally while at the store sometimes I would see, oh well, looks like celery was added, and we need milk, and all these things, and it works pretty well. So I can only imagine that on the watch it would also be just as useful.
Well, the way I sort of imagined it being really useful is, right now I walk through the drugstore or the grocery store and I've got the shopping cart in one hand
And the
and
phone
my
in the
phone
other.
in the other hand, and you see that. Like, you go to the grocery store now and you see everybody. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, I think you're getting the best version, my
Yes,
acting out of
gesticulating.
the grocery store and the iPhone in the other hand. If you're just listening on the audio, I'm sorry, you're missing some amazing acting over here. But I imagined that, wow, that's another place where I see the watch being really useful, because the list is right there. You could just, I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily enter things on it, but just to have it right there and free up your hand so you can go scroll through it. Oh, I need milk, I need cheese. So I'm a little surprised that, at least as far as I can tell, there is no reminders app. And it's not just for when you're actually at the store. This morning, I was making breakfast and I was like, oh, I need cheese. I need some more cheese because I eat too much cheese. Um, and I went to my computer to add it to the reminders list. Wouldn't it be great if I could just say, hold up my wrist and say, add cheese to my grocery store list? And at the moment, it doesn't seem like you can do that, which just seems like a weird omission.
And the other thing is there's no third-party apps like it either. So you have to wonder if there's something in the rules or some sort of limitation that just hasn't been released yet that we don't know about, because it does seem strange.
And I think, in an odd way, I think it does take dictation to Siri to send a reminder to your phone. I think I remember seeing that. So you could hold up the wrist and say, remind me to call my mom at 6 p.m. tonight, or
Right,
remind me
yeah.
to call Brian, and that will link to the reminders app, but on your phone, not on the watch.
Well, I mean,
And you'll get it.
essentially it's the same thing, right?
Well, you'll get it,
Right now.
and I think maybe this is just, maybe like I'm using the reminders app as a list making device, because
Right.
you're right. If I say that, remind me to call someone at 6 p.m., I'll actually get the notification on the watch as well as the phone. So maybe if you're using it to make lists, you're using it in the wrong way. But if you're using it to make reminders, that function is, in theory, kind of built in behind the scenes in the watch.
So what's invisible right now is literally viewing the reminders that we know we can make based on the demo, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is my very long
Yeah.
and complicated way of saying you're missing the list part of
Where's
the
the
reminders.
list? Okay,
Yeah, like
yeah.
I think you still get the reminders. Like, if you set a reminder in the reminders app on the phone, I think it will ding you on your watch, but you just won't get that in list format.
It's going to be very interesting to see what the reality is when this all is real.
Well, 6 weeks to go. All right, what else? Another interesting thing that I guess I get for a few different reasons, but I also don't fully get, is that on the watch, you can get and respond to iMessages.
Right.
You can get and make phone calls.
No
you-
SMS? Is this what you're talking about?
No.
Okay.
You can get emails, but you can't respond to emails. Emails is the only thing on the watch, that you cannot reply to. You can make phone calls on your watch. You can respond to text messages. You can read emails on the watch, but you can't respond to them. And I guess, like, you can mark them as read. You can delete them. And using handoffs, you can pull up pull up that email and respond to it on the phone.
My guess is that they did some testing, and a text message is short enough, a Twitter message is short enough, pulling up an email telling it to archive, telling it to delete is short enough and easy enough. But the accuracy, when put to the test for typing out sentences, if you've ever tried to use the dictation and you have to say apostrophe s period space,
Mm.
you have to say those things. And I'm guessing they're not enabling that because the experience just isn't what they want it to be yet. And they want everyone to have good interactions, even if it's limited. I think it probably that's why a lot of features have been held back in previous products because they want it to be good when they've got it there. They don't want to have it half-ass.
It's interesting you should say that because I think you're probably right, and it's not something I contemplated, but it's probably a limitation of the dictation because when you're replying to the text message, I think this is actually a really nifty feature. You reply by voice, but after you've made the voice reply, it gives you the option how to send it either as
A voice recording
a voice
or as
record
text.
or the text. So you can look at it and say, oh, it transcribed my message perfectly, send that as text, or it completely, screwed it up and did something else, and just send the audio because I don't have time to try to re-record it.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't think about that. Maybe it's just they felt that somebody trying to dictate a multi-sentence email was just gonna A, look like an idiot, and B, like it just wasn't gonna work the way they would want it to work.
Right. After a couple sentences, you have to deal with formatting. Are you gonna, say return for paragraphs? I mean, yeah, I just assumed that it would get messy somehow.
I mean, I guess I'm a little surprised that they didn't have it because you always have the option to respond to an email with a quick sentence the way that you would respond to a text message with a quick message. So I'm surprised they at least just didn't give you that option. Like clearly, well, not clearly, but you would probably not want to, even if you could, dictate a multi-paragraph email to your wrist. But you could certainly just as easily as you could send off a one sentence via text message, send off one sentence via email.
Yeah, yeah, and who knows? Maybe they're trying to curate the experience, and they know that hey, people are going to realize that's when I need to pull out my phone. There's moments for the phone, moments for the watch. We're going to discover what they all are, and Apple can nudge us in one direction or the other with what they allow us to do.
All right, what else? I'm just looking through the apps right now. Anything else, Nicholas, catching your eye?
Some stuff that I thought was maybe a little worrisome, like I don't know that I'd want to look at real estate on a tiny 42 millimeter watch face, but I'm not going to stop them from releasing an app.
And again, I think that's going to be going back to what we were saying before, which is, just as I'm really bullish on the idea that some apps were meant for the wrist,
Right.
I think we're going to find out that some apps are still better on the phone.
Yeah, I actually looking at another one. There's some obvious good fits, like the Fandango app, both for keeping your ticket in Passbook, easy, simple. It's already been integrated for a while, and then what I'm seeing is that they also integrate with the Maps feature, so that you could basically get little guidance to the theater, and that's also pretty nice. So stuff like that. I'm seeing a surprisingly small number of games, and any game would have to be pretty simple. But I think they're gonna try to discourage that because that's a battery waster, and it doesn't seem like really what the watch was intended for. That's kind of putting it in a category that they don't want it. It's making it a gimmick almost.
Well, the thing, I think I heard this on Gruber's show that apparently they're really encouraging developers to limit interactions with the watch to about 10 seconds.
Oh wow.
They're really saying this is not something that you are going to spend a lot of your time, with a deep dive in. That's not the point of the watch. And so I think they said, if there's an interaction that can be made with the watch in, 10 or 15 seconds, get it closer to 10 than 15.
Right. Yeah, like we said, nudging. Okay, so nudging the experience for the users and nudging the third parties to create that experience.
The other thing I'm really looking forward to, and you said it with the Fandango app, and in some ways it's actually kind of halfway there. It's not quite where I would want it to be yet. It'll be the barcode for your ticket, and I think it's going to be the barcode for a lot of things.
The
Which
second half is the NFC, right? That would be the completion of that.
exactly, because one thing that separates Apple Pay from the competing payment platforms on the phone is that it's not a barcode. I ride Amtrak every so often, and I pull up the Amtrak app on my iPhone, and a
Right.
lot of people do now. I don't know if you ride Amtrak, but every time, as the conductor goes down, the aisle and tries to scan the iPhones, it's like this little dance where he's holding up his scanner, and you've got your
Right.
phone. You're trying to
Yeah.
like tilt the phone so it doesn't have all the
Adjust
glare,
the
and
screen brightness
he's
and
like that. He grabs the phone, and
yep.
you're
Yep.
doing this little like barcode scanning dance. And NFC totally eliminates that because there's nothing to scan. There's nothing that needs to be in the visual line of sight.
Yep.
It just it
It's proximity,
it's
authentication,
proximity.
and go. It's done.
So while I'm really excited about the watch, being able to carry my Fandango tickets and my Amtrak tickets, I know for that, at least at first, that's all going to be done by a barcode as well. So you're still going to be dealing with that kind of jiggly connection rather than the NFC chip that we all know the watch has.
Right. No, and this is part of why I'm far more excited for the watch year 2 than I am for version 1. And it's not Apple's fault. It's just that they're very forward thinking. They've got a lot of support, but the world and the third parties haven't caught up, and the third party and small teams that are going to make apps haven't come up with those great designs for new interactions with this new platform yet, and that's all gonna come. It's just gonna take a little while.
And then the other thing we discussed a few weeks ago on the podcast is how is NFC? How are they going to open that up to the Fandangos and Amtraks of the world? Are they just going to eventually say, all right, if you want to tap into this NFC chip for ticketing, have at it? Or are they going to say, if you want to tap into this NFC chip, you have to be an official Apple Pay partner? Is Amtrak going to have to register with Apple Pay to get have access to that NFC chip? And that's not clear just yet.
Well, I mean, okay, so what sold the banks and the credit card companies on Apple Pay? It was the authentication was being guaranteed by Apple, was being handled by Apple, and those tokens and that interaction was being handled by Apple. So they do have to cut Apple a little piece of every one of those interactions, but they're also getting something in return. So I'd imagine that it would be the same sort of trade-off with companies like Amtrak. Okay, we can guarantee to a certain extent or completely the security and validity of these tickets, but you have to, using the platform, you have to follow the rules just like everyone else, and we get 0.005% of every ticket used or whatever it is.
Oh, it's funny. I actually didn't think, even as I was saying that Apple would necessarily charge people for that privilege.
Well, yeah, I think
Like, I don't
it's
know
in
if
their
it-
interest to spread the platform, and I understand when it's transactional, literally transactional versus a
Like-
use case for convenience. There's a trade-off. I guess there might be some companies and some interactions that they're handling the security to an extent that they would require a piece of that payment just for their risk and for their involvement, and others that would just be purely to grow the platform of Apple Pay and to push the utility of their devices forward.
Well, it's the difference between sending cash and sending authorization. So, like, going to Duane Reade and buying a pack of gum, you're transmitting cash. Once you've bought your Fandango ticket and just being scanned in, or
Right.
being scanned into Amtrak, you're just verifying identity. You're verifying that you had previously purchased a ticket or scanning
So
in.
I guess if we're living in the complete Apple ecosystem, you could be on your Apple iPhone and buy the Fandango ticket, authenticating with Apple Pay on with your thumbprint, and that piece of the transaction would be guaranteed by Apple, and they'd get a little piece of that. And then the other half, the NFC half, is the authentication when they actually get to the theater, and that doesn't require any actual payment or piece thereof. So yeah, I guess it's two pieces. You're right.
And so what's going to be interesting is to use that second piece, will developers have to be registered Apple Pay partners? Are they always going to channel that? Is Apple going to open up the NFC chip to Fandango? Not necessarily if they're Apple Pay cash partners, but are they Apple Pay transaction partners?
Now, it's something interesting. You remember when Apple Pay first came out, there was a bit of back and forth with some companies that were supporting it and others that weren't, and CVS was amongst the largest that decided to pull support. And they already had tons of NFC cashier machines out there. And so until they pulled it, even though they weren't an official partner or whatever, anything with an NFC cashier would actually just process the transaction because it was the right technology. So I'm thinking maybe for that second half, as long as it's NFC and it has the basic hardware functionality, that it wouldn't really need to be registered as a partner.
I guess we'll see. The other thing that I was really surprised about with the watch, and I don't think they mentioned this in September, is that in order to activate Apple Pay on the watch, you have to double tap one of the side buttons.
Oh, yes, yes. I do remember seeing this.
And that's such a small thing, and I guess I get why they did that, because you wouldn't want to be walking around with your NFC device on your wrist and buying everybody lunch as you walk down the street.
I can just imagine the new version of credit card scammer swipers. They're just following people and getting close to their wrists on the street and stealing all sorts of transactions. No, there has to be some sort of check, and maybe there will be a smoother, more elegant way to do that in the future. But they have to start somewhere. We'll see how it really works in practice, how irritating or elegant that is.
I don't think it's irritating, but I guess in my mind, when I was envisioning paying with the watch, I envisioned something a little bit more seamless, that it was just hold your wrist up, and because it's close, because it's within a few inches of the terminal, it's going to authorize that transaction. Now there's just this added part right before, and again, not terrible, double tap the button, then hold your wrist up. But I don't know. I wonder if that was something that was always intended, or just between September and now, as they contemplated some of the security concerns, they're like, oh, we actually need this additional barrier before your watch just charges your credit card.
Yeah, with Touch ID, you have to put your thumb there, and that's you essentially doing what would be the double tap for the watch, right? There's no thumbprint interaction here, and it would be more involved really to do that sort of thing for the watch. And the fact that you have it on just says that it'll allow the transaction to take place. But yeah, I guess there needs to be something that says, hey, I'm actually trying to buy something.
Right, exactly. All right. Badooba day. What else? If you're watching on the air, we'll probably cut all this out on the final audio. You're not listening to us.
I have been texted and told that we actually have some live listeners, and they're learning a lot, they say.
Oh, it says right here, we've got 5 listeners. This is great. So if you're watching live, there's a way in theory for you actually to be able to send us questions live, but I don't fully know how to do that.
We'll be more ready next time. I think we weren't expecting that.
I guess if you have a question, you can text one of us, because one of us will see it pop up. So to all of our we've got 6 live listeners now. If you have a question about any of this, now would be the time to text us.
Yes, you have our ears.
So I'm just gonna. This is what they call fill, right?
Well, yeah, I guess we could.
So literally, Nicholas and I.
We're just killing time right now.
We are standing by, because we've never been live before. This is the first time we are live. We're in Brooklyn. Yep. You may not be in Brooklyn. But if you have a question, you can text one of us about Apple Watch, about anything.
Yeah,
we will answer that.
We've hammered on about Apple Watch for a while, but really anything. We're just open to our live audience, receptive to any questions.
So literally, just pull out your phone, send us a text. We will get it in real time.
It's exciting.
And,
Yeah.
like as you send the text,
This
or
must
once you.
be this must be what it's like to do a telethon or something. You know, call right now. We're here, standing by on the phone.
Well, I think part of the secret is just say the same thing over and over again, but kind of just
Okay.
put different inflection on it, so it sounds a little different.
All right. I think we might need a backup plan because people might be a little shy about this whole thing.
You think people are shy about sending us a
I don't
text?
know. Maybe they just don't know what to say.
I don't think anyone needs to be shy. I think you have a phone. This is a phone. Just pick it up, send us a text. We will answer or try to answer, or if we don't know the answer, we will make up the answer live on air, and it'll sound
Wow,
authoritative.
shameless self. Now we know the lengths you will go.
I won't stop at anything. The other thing I should point out for all of our live listeners is that I have been switching the camera live
Oh
during
yeah.
this.
So all the camera work, that is Daniel.
So whenever there's like a pause between me speaking and Nicholas speaking and the camera's not switched, that's because I have not done it automatically. There's a way to automate this, but I've not yet figured it out. All right, so we have a question. No, we don't have a question. My sister writes in, great live podcast. Thank you, Jess.
Okay. Well,
Comments are welcome. I take compliments and comments.
there you go. Like we said, shameless. So, yeah, I mean, we have other stuff that we can delve into,
I've
even
got
while we
nothing.
wait. No,
I've got
nothing.
nothing.
Nothing. All right. What about follow up from last week? Anything that you kind of felt we didn't dig into enough?
All right, so I got a question.
All right, great.
We got a question. How would a mom use the watch?
Okay, so I was listening to another podcast, the tech podcast I like, the Tested podcast, and one of the hosts was making the case for his wife using the watch, and he was saying that one of the things about her using the iPhone is that she has this great device that does has all this utility, has all this use, and that is great when she's using it. But when she's not using it, guess where it goes? It goes in her handbag. And so often the host would complain about calling and texting and trying to get in touch with his wife, and just because it's in this handbag that may be elsewhere or far away, he's effectively cut off from her. And so the fact that you could do a lot of the simple notification, unobtrusive, important, like you said, the important people in your life notifications, um, get notified that someone's trying to get in touch with you, and get your phone calls and know, oh, I can take this right here. I don't have to dig around in my purse to get my phone out for something important. That's the kind of thing that he said. So for a mom, it could be something as simple as the reminders app that we were talking about, or it could be just simply being more available for phone calls, which I know, calling my mom, she is bad about answering the phone.
Well, I think so. You just brought up a great point. And whether it's moms or women who carry handbags or men who carry bags, but I know a lot of people who carry their phones in their bags. And if you are trying to get to them, they are not going to hear that or necessarily notice that until they pull the phone out of their pocket. And I think this goes back to a little bit about what I was saying earlier in the show about being the gatekeeper. I certainly wouldn't want everybody to be able to notify me or get to me on my wrist.
Right.
But if I'm someone who carries a purse and my phone lives in my purse, but so I don't have to constantly worry about the notifications coming into the phone, but I knew that, my partner, my husband, wife, whatever, could always get to me by sending me a text message and I would get it on the wrist, that to me would be a great thing for a mom
Absolutely.
or anyone with a bag. And I have to say, one of the things I've been looking forward to, I know I read my aunt's email to me earlier today, and she said, I don't want to be even more connected. I'm actually looking forward to leaving my phone in my bag, leaving it in my backpack when I'm on the subway or going around the city, and letting, again, the watch just only send me the really important notifications that I would want in that scenario.
And like we said last week, talking about the fact that Bluetooth is not required, and that the distance between your phone and the watch can be as far as Wi-Fi can reach it. will be even more untethered to the phone. So yeah, I think it's gonna allow a lot more of the important interactions and a lot fewer of the, obsessive checking of Twitter and the things that kind of trap us in the digital space that, we get stuck in with our smartphones.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hiding my phone more out of the way when I have the watch and not being sucked into that Twitter vortex. Um, and then, all right, so we have a second question. Before we answer it again, I'll just encourage you, if you're watching live, feel free to send us your questions via text. We will get them, send them to me, send them to Nicholas. We are here to answer your questions about the Apple Watch or any of the new Apple announcements, or frankly, anything,
Any tech
anything,
related
anything.
question?
I'll go beyond tech.
Sure.
Actually, why not? I mean, I can answer stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
But tech probably preferred. All right, so here's our second
Daniel
question.
QNY, Renaissance man.
Um, how could a lawyer use the watch? So I think this depends on what the lawyer is doing, but I guess my first sort of gut reaction is, well, if it's a lawyer who's traveling, I think there's a lot of great travel features for the watch, and this would apply to anyone who travels a lot. But again, I think having your boarding pass right on your wrist, not having to fumble with the phone, being alerted when the plane is boarding, getting walking directions in a new city. I was in San Francisco in September, and had walking directions a lot to try to get around. I had it on the phone, and I felt like my head was always buried in my phone.
Oh, that's one of the things that they didn't mention. They haven't reintroduced since they first mentioned it when they announced the phone. But if you remember, they talked about the Maps feature actually being something that you wouldn't even have to keep your eyes on, because you would get the haptic feedback that would tell you, oh, now it's time to turn right. Now it's time to turn left. I nearly forgot about it until you kind of mentioned walking around town. But yeah, that could be your secret weapon. As far as a lawyer, I am not a lawyer, and I know many, but I don't know what the day-to-day is like. But I can tell you this: for anyone with a busy schedule, I can imagine that the reminders and integration with calendar and appointments and all of that would be invaluable to be able to either get little reminders of what's coming up, or to be able to glance and say, oh, that's right, I have this deadline, I have X thing that I marked as important, because we know just the same as on the phone, there's a pull-down screen with the glanceable schedule for the day, and something very similar for the watch. So I imagine that would be helpful as well.
Well, so actually what you just said is totally true, and something I forgot as well, that a lot of the watch faces on the watch will allow you to program your next event.
And customize what you show, and a lot of them can show the next thing in your day.
And I think, like right now, if I have a really important meeting, I put it in my calendar, then I set like 5 alarms, like
Oh, yeah.
5 hours before, 4 hours before, an hour before, 30 minutes before. Like if there's something really important, and I just think like, I'm going to be a space cadet and I have the potential to forget it, that's actually something totally new to human history. This idea that, like, I'm making it sound more grander than it is, but like you check your watch in the morning and it's like, oh yeah, I've got a 3 o'clock appointment, and then you're on the subway just to, you're curious if the subway's running late or not. Oh yeah, I've got that 3 o'clock appointment. You're standing in line at lunch and you're like, oh yeah, I've got that 3 o'clock appointment. Just every time you're checking.
Better, but yeah, it's there constantly reminding you, in case you say left your phone in your bag and haven't looked at it in a few hours. But yeah, it's even better than that. It's context aware. It knows where you are. Like, let's say you're in the city, you're on the train, and you get to a stop with reception, and you realize, oh, I'm behind. You know what? Let me send a quick text message to let them know I'm running late. That's the type of thing that with the watch you're going to be able to do that would be just a little more difficult, and you'd have to be a lot more engaged and looking for that sort of thing to do the exact same interaction on the phone. You wouldn't just be able to glance and realize. You wouldn't be alerted to changes in your day. You'd have to really dig in there and look and make those decisions yourself. I think It's context sensitive. It knows where you are. It's got all the power of the phone behind it, but the advantage that it's right there on you all the time. So I think it's gonna help out a lot with scheduling and getting you where you need to go.
But I just think, just very simply, always see, if you wanted to, always seeing the next event whenever you glance down at the time. You know, we've never had the ability before to, you know, look at the time and simultaneously see the next thing that we have to be at. I think that's kind of cool. You don't have to, but it's definitely a setting that you can make on the watch. All right, well, great. I think we are probably about to wrap things up. I don't think I have any app recommendations this week. I think I'm out of.
I've got one. I've got one. So one of the things that was famous for not being on the iPhone at first was copy paste, but then we have a whole new medium of copy paste now that we have, our phones, our computers, maybe soon to be Apple Watches. If you need to copy something from if you've got a link or something from the phone and you want to send it to the computer or vice versa, how do you get that inter-device copy paste? There's a whole bunch of apps that do it. I have found one called Scribe that is great. It sets up a Bluetooth 4.0 connection between your phone and your computer, just like Knock, which I recommended a few weeks back, and you just use the shortcut. Whatever you've copied in the computer shows up on the phone, and vice versa, and it's there. It saves your interactions back and forth, so you could save things to the clipboard if you use it a lot, and it's a nice way to kind of jump between your devices if you've got something that's not easy to just send to the computer or to the phone.
And what's that called again?
Scribe.
Scribe. All right, great. And actually, I do have an app recommendation. It's an app that I've only just begun playing with, and it's because I had a very specific need yesterday. I had a PDF that somebody had emailed me, and I had it on my computer, and I saved it to my iCloud Drive, which is a repository of all the documents that you want to sync between your devices. And the thing about iCloud Drive is if you save a numbers document in it, and you open up the Numbers app on your phone, you'll be able to pull up that file. But I had a PDF, and I saved it to iCloud Drive, and
So what happened?
there was no way to pull it up on my phone. I just wanted to pull up the PDF that was sitting in iCloud Drive.
And didn't know how to handle it?
It'll sync between all my devices, but I can't actually read that. I can't pull that PDF up, which is insane. So there's an app called Documents, and it's free, and it allows you to actually see the files within your iCloud Drive. So if you have something that's not a numbers document or not a pages document, like a PDF, and you want to be able to open it, Documents will allow you to see all the files within your iCloud Drive, and then it will open that in the appropriate app on your phone, in this case, iBooks, which can read,
Yeah, it can open PDFs.
Can read PDFs.
Right.
So that is my recommendation.
Something I've been testing, and I know this off tangent just a little bit, but Microsoft has, under the new leadership of Satya Nadella, has become more open about its software integration policy, and they just changed over all their apps, as well as their new Mac OS 10 Microsoft Office beta, which I'm running, and allowed iCloud support for all documents. So they're breaking down the barriers. They have built-in Dropbox support, built-in, of course, SkyDrive support, OneDrive support now is what it's called, and built-in iCloud support. So they don't care where your files are saved to. They're supporting all of it. And I think it's a great change, and really it's a big sign of the new Microsoft attitude towards openness and just trying to be useful no matter what the competition is.
I have to say, I'm definitely seeing more things that Microsoft is doing that I'm excited about. I still don't necessarily want to go all in with their products, but I think they're getting closer to doing something that is appealing to those of us who are in Apple land. All right, we got a question, and it's all right. We're not even going to try to answer that.
No?
All right. This is from the host of another podcast. If you are into sports, this is a great podcast called The Bitterness and Rage Show. You can now find it on Yahoo Sports Network.
Sounds compelling. What sport?
All sports.
All sports.
All
Okay.
sports. All sports. And so the question that this viewer writes is, how will the Rangers do in the Stanley Cup playoffs without King Henry in goal? Can Cam Talbot carry the banner of the Blue Shirts? I'm going to say,
I'm ill prepared for this.
if you want to know the answer, you should listen to the Bitterness and Rage show.
Wow, that's the right answer.
I think that's what you should be doing. If you want to know, you need to go onto the Yahoo Sports Network. They have a website. They also have an app, and you need to search for Bitterness and Rage, and then you need to listen to the Bitterness and Rage show. Also, I should say you could also find that answer by following Bitterness and Rage on Twitter. So if you want to know the answer to that question, follow Bitterness and Rage. Let me actually pull up their actual handle here, or somebody could text me their actual handle.
Please do not Google Bitterness and Rage. That will not lead you to the correct place. You'll see a lot of angry people, sad people, hurting people. Not about sports.
God, this is the worst radio ever.
It's live.
We're totally cutting all this out.
Warts and all, it doesn't matter.
And of course, my computer's killing me right now because I am
trying to do something. It's just
because we're video casting. All right, Bitter and Rage at Bitter and Rage. So if you want to know how the Rangers will do in the Stanley Cup playoffs without King Henry in goal, and can Cam Talbot carry the banner of the Blue Shirts, then what you need to do right now is follow Bitter and Rage on Twitter, and I think you'll get your answer. All right, that's it for Brooklyn. Those of us in Brooklyn today.
Yeah, that's both of us. That's all of us.
Nicholas, thank you for joining, and we'll catch all of you live or on audio. Not next week. We're taking next week off.
That is correct.
But we're back live in the studio 2 weeks from today. We have a very special guest that's going to be joining us. We're very excited to have him. I'm not going to tell you who he is just yet. You'll have to join us on the 29th or the Sunday, whatever that's Sunday. I think that's the 29th. That's Sunday. Everybody else, thank you. Take care. Have a great one, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.